Hello everyone, welcome to another live bake along. Today it's going to be a first for one of these things because we are doing gluten-free. My younger sister, she's been gluten intolerant for a few years now, and I've only just recently started doing gluten-free baking, and it's not as hard as I imagined. You just need to make a couple of adaptations, and then you're good to go. So yeah, I've made these cookies a few times. First time they went horribly wrong because I added too much binding agent. Don't worry, I'm gonna quickly explain what binding agents are in a little while. Sort of part of me nattering on whilst I wait for people to sort of filter in. But yeah, the first time I made them, I put too much binding agent in, and they ended up looking a bit like bread rolls, but they were still really tasty. No, sorry, that was the second time I made them. The first time I didn't have any binding agent whatsoever, and they just collapsed. And third time I made them, they actually worked out all right. So third time lucky, and this will be the fourth time I've used this recipe, so it's tried and tested. Today I'm not using a vegan recipe, but this is a very easy recipe to veganise, and when I start talking about binding agents and everything, I'll explain why the recipes for gluten-free and vegan and gluten-free are all slightly different. But before we start, just the obligatory disclaimer. I'm not a professional, I'm just a Marxist who happens to really like baking. I think last week proved that I'm definitely not a professional, but I just really enjoy baking, and I hope that you enjoy these bake-alongs as well. As always, this is a free live stream, but if you'd like to donate to Socialist Appeal to help us build the forces of Marxism, then there is a link in the description below. I'm so thankful for all your donations, really. Everyone has been incredibly generous, and I'm so grateful, and we really appreciate all your support. Basic hygiene now. Make sure that if you've got long hair, you've tied it back. Make sure that you've wiped all your work surfaces and washed your hands, you know, basic stuff. All right, let's get to it, and let's start by going through all the ingredients. So first of all, we've got 235 grams of gluten-free flour. Obviously, you only need gluten-free flour if you're making them gluten-free. Then I have 175 grams of sugar. My recipe calls for caster sugar, but I've had real trouble finding caster sugar. I only had 20 grams left in the cupboard, and I haven't been able to get any from the shops. So what I have got is a mixture of caster sugar, a very soft dark brown sugar. Dark brown sugar is very soft. It's the kind of sugar you use for fruitcakes, for gingerbread. It's very soft, and so to sort of balance that out, I've added a little bit of granulated sugar in as well, which is harder, it's coarser, the granules are bigger. It's the kind of sugar you put in your tea. So I'm hoping that should all balance out. The cookies will just be a little bit softer, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Then we have an egg. As I said, I'm not making this vegan, and I'll explain why we've got the egg, because not all biscuits need an egg. Then I've got 115 grams of butter. If you're making this vegan, you can use dairy-free spread. I have a teaspoon of vanilla extract, just for, don't know what that was, just for a little bit of flavour. I've got xanthan gum. You only need this if you're making it gluten-free, and I'll explain why in a second. And then I've got 85 grams of Smarties. You can, because this is a basic cookie recipe, you can really use any filling that you like. White milk, dark chocolate chips. You could use dried fruit like cranberries, like we did a few weeks ago. You could use oats, you could use nuts, anything. It's entirely up to you, whatever you like, whatever you enjoy and like to eat. Alright, before we start actually baking, I'm just going to very quickly give you a little food science lesson all about binding agents. So a binding agent kind of does what it says on the tin. It binds all the ingredients together and stops them collapsing. Two of the most common binding agents in baking are gluten and egg. Now, obviously, we are not working, or I'm not working with gluten today because I am making gluten-free cookies for my sister. And if you're vegan, you're obviously not working with egg. So if you're making these cookies vegan, but not gluten-free, then it's very easy. You just leave out the egg, and the gluten in the flour is enough to bind all the ingredients together. Again, I've written a list of ingredients in the event that I made for this, so I'll post a link to that. I'll post a link to the recipe. If you're making them gluten-free, then obviously you don't have that gluten, but you do have the egg, and the egg acts as the binding agent in that case, and it binds all the ingredients together and stops them collapsing. If you're making vegan and gluten-free cookies, obviously you don't have any binding agent at all. So this is where the xanthan gum is. Don't know if you can see, the lighting in here is not great. I'm standing right in front of a window, which isn't ideal, but that's just where the table is. Xanthan gum is a godsend, really, in terms of vegan baking, in terms of gluten-free baking, sorry. If you are gluten intolerant, get yourself some xanthan gum, it will change your life. Xanthan gum is a binding agent, and it's quite a strong one as well, and it just, yeah, in the place of egg or gluten, it binds everything together. So I didn't know about xanthan gum when I started doing gluten-free baking, and the first time I made cookies, they just collapsed. The first time I tried to make pastry, I just used gluten-free flour and butter, the same way you would if you were making non-gluten-free pastry, but obviously without the gluten, there wasn't anything really to bind it together, and it was so crumbly. It was more like a shortbread, which isn't as nice as you might think. So yeah, a little bit of xanthan gum. I'm going to be adding a little sprinkle to my cookies today, even though I am using an egg, partly because I'm using such a soft sugar. I want that little extra bit of binding, but also just to be 100% safe that they don't collapse, because I'm quite paranoid. But honestly, I'm not going to be using much, not even a quarter of a teaspoon, like a little sprinkle. If you are making these vegan and gluten-free, I recommend about a teaspoon max, maybe a little bit less, of xanthan gum, because you don't want them to be too bound together, because then they end up a bit like bread rolls. Still really tasty, but excuse me, but maybe not the texture that you are after. All right, without further ado, let's get baking. First things first, as always, after the basic hygiene stuff, make sure that you preheat the oven. Today I'm going to be preheating the oven to 180 degrees. I have a fan oven, but so usually with a fan oven you would knock 20 degrees off, so I'd be maybe doing these at 160, but my oven is a little bit dodgy, so I'm doing it to 180. Next, what we need to do is we need to line our baking trays, and this is very simple. You just get your grease-proof parchment, baking paper, whatever you want to call it, and you get your baking tray and you just stick it on top. Could not be easier. I've got a couple of baking trays because when you make cookies you need to have them pretty far apart, because they spread and you don't want them squishing into each other. But if you only have one baking tray, then that's okay, you can just make them in a few batches. Alright, now to get to the actual baking. Those of you who watched me a couple of weeks ago know that I sort of had a bit of a disaster and broke the whisk attachment. Thankfully this is my backup mixer, so it's not the end of the world. My main mixer is up in Norwich, and since I haven't been there and I haven't moved out yet, I don't have that with me, but thankfully the beater works fine for what we're doing today, and the beater attachment is entirely made of metal, so hopefully it should be a little bit more difficult to break. That and I won't mess up like I did last time, fingers crossed. Alright, the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to cream our butter and our sugar. Creaming is a technique that is usually used for cakes, something like a Victoria sponge, or if you remember back over a month ago when I did this first bake-along, when I made my lemon and elderflower drizzle cake, we creamed the butter and the sugar together. And it just makes sure, and it helps to keep that light, fluffy sort of texture that we're looking for in a cake, but also in a cookie. So there's our 115 grams of butter, and in goes our 175 grams of sugar. If you haven't been able to get caster sugar like me, don't worry about it. Just make sure you know how hard or how soft the sugar that sugars that you're using is, so that you can adjust your recipe accordingly. If you're using a softer sugar like me, then you might want to think about adding a little bit more binding agent or adding a harder sugar to sort of offset that. But I'm just going to mix this for well, we'll see how long it takes, but mix it on a medium speed. Make sure you can actually see my mixer, that might be helpful. Mix it on a medium speed until it's nice and creamed together. I'm using a stand mixer because, as I've mentioned a few times, I've got pretty dodgy hands, so it just is more helpful for me to use a stand mixer. But if you don't have a stand mixer, that's fine, you don't need one. This recipe works equally well with a hand whisk, or if you don't have an electric whisk, then just a bit of good old-fashioned elbow grease will do as well. With a stand mixer, do make sure that you're scraping around the edge and the bottom of the bowl so that you get all of the ingredients combined. Just going to leave that on for a little bit longer. Again. Mine is looking a little different than it would normally, just because I'm using, just because of the sugars that I'm using. If I was using just caster sugar, this would be coming together a little bit more quickly and a little bit more easily. So it's because I've got a mixture of granulated sugar and dark brown sugar with about 20 grams of caster sugar, because it's all I have in the cupboard. But as the saying goes, survive, adapt, overcome. There we go. Now, hopefully you can see that that's nicely combined. It's all nice and creamed together. Lovely jubbly. Right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the rest of our wet ingredients, which is our, I can get the thing open, a teaspoon of vanilla extract. If you don't have vanilla extract, don't worry, this is just for a little bit of flavour, but if you don't have any, then that's fine. You don't want too much because otherwise the vanilla can be very overpowering. Oh, it's a lovely smell. Gonna add that, and we're also, waste not, want not, we are also going to add our egg. So that's all our wet ingredients now. I'm just going to whisk those up again. At this stage, when you add your egg in, what you might find is that the egg and the butter split. This is known as curdling. It's nothing to worry about. It can always be saved. What will happen is once you start adding your flour, that will help the mixtures to help the different ingredients to what's the word I'm looking for? Combine together properly. And even if you can't resolve a curdling problem, it's not the end of the world, because that butter will just melt when it's in the oven. Alright, so now that's nicely combined together. Again, just make sure that if you are using a whisk, you're scraping everything off, because we don't want to waste any of these good ingredients. Right, now that's done, I'm going to move this off take this off the mixer. And I'm just going to put a little bit of kitchen roll down there so that pop that there, and just leave that there. It's always handy to clean up as you go. Now, for the next bit, we're going to be doing it by hand. And we need a wooden spoon. And what we're going to do is we're just going to, bit by bit, add our flour. And we're just going to stir that in. You probably won't be able to see, but I will show you as we go through. If you want a super indulgent and extra chocolatey cookie, what you can do is you can take out 30 grams of the flour, whether it's gluten-free or a gluten-containing flour. You can take out 30 grams of flour and instead add or substitute it for 30 grams of cocoa powder. It's a lovely little extra indulgent treat, but I'm just doing I suppose a normal cookie base. But as I say, there's absolutely no reason why you can't. Make sure that you're scraping all the way around the bowl, and make sure you get under the mixture so that you incorporate all of the flour. Hopefully you can see. Now, because of the sugar, I'm working with a slightly softer mixture than I'm used to, because I'm having to use dark brown sugar instead of my regular caster sugar, but that's not a problem. Once I add all my flour, I will exercise my own judgment and see whether I need to add some xanthan gum. And after last week, I'm not 100% sure whether I should trust my judgment. We'll see how we go. So make sure you get all the way under. You're just making sure that all the flour is incorporated, because there's nothing worse than a lump of raw flour in a baked good. Don't eat raw flour, kids, it's not good for you. A little bit of raw cake mixture here and there isn't going to hurt, but don't make it a habit. There we go, that's the last of the flour. Dark brown sugar is a great sugar. It's used for making fruit cakes and gingerbread, so you could always make gingerbread cookies. Chocolate chip gingerbread does sound really lovely, actually. But one of the reasons why when you bite into a gingerbread it's very soft is partly because of that brown sugar. That dark brown sugar is very soft. As you can see from the colour of my mixture, hopefully, it's not the usual colour of what we might expect a cookie dough to look like. But it's okay, it's still going to taste amazing. And it proves that even if, you know, obviously we're living in uncertain times and maybe can't get all the ingredients that we want, but there's no reason why we can't still all have a load of fun baking. We just need to adapt. And once you understand the way that food works, it's easy as pie. Last but not least, before I add my xanthan gum, I'm going to add my fillings. Fillings, I don't know what word to use. Fillings doesn't sound right. Toppings doesn't either. If anyone does know the right word to use, please tell me. I'm going to add my Smarties. I've got just over 85 grams. You can use more if you want. You can have more chocolate than cookie if that's your style, or you can have them a little bit bare. It's entirely up to you. Okay. I'm going to put a tiny little, if I can get the thing open, get a tiny little bit, I don't know if you can see, but that is how little I'm using. I'm not even using 1/4 of a teaspoon because I just want to add a tiny little bit of extra binding powder, but I don't want it to be super gluey. For the second time I made these cookies, when I went a little bit overboard and added too much xanthan gum, too much binding agent. Oops, a bit of loose flour there, make sure that's all nicely worked in. Yeah, the second time I made these cookies and went a little bit overboard with the xanthan gum, the mixture was almost the consistency of glue. Now, I'm going to be a little bit indulgent and add an extra tube of Smarties, because why not? I don't know why I always say in my recipes, like, oh, 85. I always end up using way more. Just 85 grams is the standard number, I suppose. Alright, a little bit more loose flour. If you do find loose flour, it's okay, it's not a problem. Just make sure that you're able to incorporate it, just give it another stir, and it'll be fine. Okay, I thought I had a big clump of flour on my skirt then, but no, it was just the light. Alright, there we go. This is what my mixture is currently looking like. It's a little bit darker than it would usually be, but that's only because of the dark brown sugar. Alright, my table is very small, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of rearranging. Alright, there we go. Okay, perfect. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spoon out my little cookie portions. I'm aiming for about a dessert spoonful size. These will make, well, an average of about 14 cookies, but you never know, it might end up being a little bit more than that. So I'm just gonna, there we go. Scoop them down into a, you know, roughly circular shape. I'm hoping you can sort of see that. Sort of a roughly circular shape, and make sure they're flattened down a little bit with the back of the spoon, or your fingers if you prefer. Now you want to keep these a decent distance from each other, because they will spread whilst they're in the oven. So you don't want them all running into each other and creating a big mess. Although if you wanted to create one massive cookie, you know, if that's what you're after, then do that. I'm going to get 6 on here, I reckon. I know I'm going to get 6 on here from when I've done this before. And just flatten them down a little bit. But be aware they will still spread a little bit in the oven. Which is why we're making sure they're at a safe distance from each other. Just like we are, these cookies are social distancing. This is proper quarantine baking now, isn't it? Now I've mentioned social distancing. Oh. There. You want to keep about an inch, I don't know what the word is, but you want to keep about an inch between your cookies all the way around, so that they've got enough room to spread. It doesn't matter if they're not all the same size. This isn't Bake Off. I won't be giving marks out of 10 for uniformity, and I certainly won't be getting marks out of 10 for uniformity either. Alright, that's it. I hope you can see those. Don't want these to slide down. That's my first batch of cookies done. So I'm going to put these in for... I'm going to check on them after 12 minutes. They take on average between 10 and 15 minutes. So I'm just going to put these in the oven now and then set a timer. Okay, that's the first batch in. Let me set a timer. So I'm going to check on those after 12 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm going to be doing my second batch, so that they're all ready to go in the oven once the other ones are done. Hopefully you can see that this is such an easy recipe. Baking doesn't have to be hard. Even if you're baking to suit a dietary requirement, it doesn't have to be difficult. It's a really easy recipe to do if you've never baked before. Good recipe to do with kids. Cookies were always one of the things that I loved to bake when I was a child. Didn't do it very often, but it was a lovely little treat. Don't know, everything always tastes a little bit better when it's homemade. It's got that bit of love in it that I think we all need now. Oh, that's a slightly bigger one. Some of the colour from the Smarties has started to bleed, so some of the actual dough itself is getting a little bit of a colourful tint to it, which is quite nice. No, that's not going to come off. That's okay. Okay. If you do have an ice cream scoop, then an ice cream scoop is a really easy way to make sure they are all the same size and similar sort of shape. If you want to do that. It's very soft. I don't want to spread too much. There we go. As always, feel free to ask any questions. I will look back at the live chat in a second once I've done this. Now we've got 12. Once I do this, I have 12 cookies, and I reckon I've got enough for maybe 4 more. So this batch has made about 16, but you can really make these cookies as big or as little as you like. If you want to make mini cookies, then you would obviously get a lot more, but if you want to make a few massive cookies, then you wouldn't get quite so many. And there we go. That's the second batch. I want all my cookies to bake evenly, so I'm going to wait until the the ones that are in the oven are done, so that I can put them all on the same shelf. And that's that. It's only been half an hour, and we're already done. How amazing is that? Ooh. All right. Yeah, as always, feel free to ask me any questions about baking or about socialism or socialist appeal or anything. Thank you to everyone who's already donated. If you'd like to donate to Socialist Appeal Norwich, then my PayPal details are in the link in the description. Every penny that you donate is so much appreciated and will help us to build the forces of Marxism so that we can overthrow this rotten capitalist system, which I think we can agree we all need to see, and so that we can have socialism in our lifetime and a society that puts people before profit. But yeah, thank you ever so much for joining me for this bake along. I swear these things get shorter and shorter every week. This is by far the shortest one. It's only half an hour, and that was after I spent about 10-15 minutes rambling all about binding agents. And these videos are educational as well as fun. But yeah, if anyone has any questions or comments or suggestions for things that they'd like to see me bake, then please do tell me. And because I love doing these bake-alongs, they're so much fun. I love them. I hope that you enjoy them as well, and we've managed to raise quite a lot of money for Socialist Appeal. And also my family have got to enjoy some really tasty treats, so it's a win-win for everyone. Everyone wins. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. As always, I will download this video and post it onto YouTube so that you can go back and watch it as many times as you'd like. Obviously, this will still also remain up on Facebook, so if you want to bake along at maybe a different time, then you can do so. If you'd like to rewatch the recipe again and make some notes for your recipe file, then you're more than welcome to do so. This is my gift to you, my gluten-free cookie recipe, tried and tested. This is the fourth time I've made this recipe. Had to adapt it slightly because of the lack of caster sugar in the supermarket, but no, it's all good. We live and learn. We survive, adapt, and overcome, as it says. Those cookies have been in the oven for about 6 minutes now, so I'm just going to check to make sure they're going okay. Oh, God bless, they haven't collapsed. They haven't collapsed. That's all I wanted, they haven't collapsed. I'm gonna natter on for a bit so that I can take these out of the oven and show you, so that you know what they should. I mean, I'm sure you guys know what cookies look like, but just in case you want to actually see what the finished product looks like, then I'll show you. Because what I usually do is, because I'm usually making cakes or something, or I don't know, scones or something. So something that takes a while in the oven, then I don't get to show you live on TV. You know what I mean? Because it just takes too long, and even I can't waste that much time just talking about nothing. But hopefully this time. No questions. No, it's cool. Okay, what I'm doing now is, see, I might be a little bit distracted. Here we go. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to link you to the post in the event that I made for this, so that you can see the ingredients list. Here we go. Okay. So yeah, there's different ingredients, as I mentioned at the beginning, because of binding agents. There's slightly different ingredients for the cookies, depending on whether you're making them vegan, gluten-free, or vegan and gluten-free. And so hopefully this link will take you to hopefully that will take you to the thing where you can see the list of ingredients. Okay, how long? Okay, so they've been in for just over 8 minutes. So I'm going to check on them in 2 minutes when they've been in for 10. When you take cookies out of the oven, they will be a little bit soft to the touch. That's totally normal. They will crisp up a little bit as they cool. Obviously, you don't want them. Well, you might like your cookies really hard all the way through, like a Maryland cookie, or you might want them a little bit softer. I like mine a little bit softer, a little bit chewy. So I'm probably going to take them out after 10 minutes, but you could leave them in for up to 12 or 15 minutes, depending on how soft or hard you wanted them. See, it's all this talking. After talking so much dries my throat out. At least nothing went wrong this time. God bless, nothing went wrong. Last week I had a bit of a nightmare. I did my measurements wrong. I did my conversions from pounds to grams wrong because I'm an idiot. Because I wasn't using my own recipe. That was why it didn't work, because I wasn't using my own recipe. I was using a recipe from 1916 to make a World dessert cake. And sorry, just checking the time. Oh, yeah, they want to come out. Move these. Sorry, my workstation is so small. Oh, they look perfect. Dangerous. There we go. Now let's just have a little. Yeah, I'm a little bit. Yeah, I think they're good. They've been in for 10 minutes. And, oh, they smell so good. They've been in for 10 minutes. They've kind of got a golden brown colour, which they were kind of always going to, just because of the dark brown sugar. But I'm going to leave these to cool. They're soft to the touch, but that's the way they should be, because they will crisp up as you cool them. Okay. Now, whilst those are cooling, I'm going to put the second batch in. There we go. Hurrah! There we go. We're all done. That's cookies baked. I'm going to leave these ones to cool. Yeah, they're too fragile to pick up at the moment. But, oh, actually, maybe. Yeah, no, I do think they want a couple more minutes. Yeah, I would leave them in for 14 to 15 minutes. I think that's the optimum time, I think. But thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to everyone who's watched this. I hope that you've enjoyed it. As I say, I'll put this on my YouTube channel so you can look at it again, watch it again. If you do bake these cookies, please let me know how they turn out. Send me pictures. I love to see what you guys are baking. Sorry, I'm just having such a nightmare with the chat bar. There we go. Let me know how they turn out. Let me know if you like them. I love this recipe, so I hope that you do too. And thank you to everyone who has donated to Socialist Appeal. If you haven't, maybe it would be amazing if you could. We really appreciate every penny that helps us to educate ourselves, educate other people, and build the forces of Marxism. And God, I sound like a stuck record, don't I? But it's just because this stuff is so important to me. Overthrowing capitalism, this rotten system, exploitative system that puts profit over people's lives. We need to just get rid of it, and we need a society that works for people and not profit. And I'm gonna shut up now and say questions of what you'd like to see me bake next time, then please let me know. And yeah, stay safe, stay sane, and stay happy. Thank you. Bye. I'll know this again.